Hey everyone, my name is John Strinkowski. I am a senior at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I study biomedical sciences, and I am also a research assistant in the School of Medicine as well as the emergency room. I am a pre-physician assistant student heading to my first interview here in a couple of weeks, and I'm excited to do this takeover today. Go ahead and shoot me any questions you have. So, just a little bit more about me. Here, you can just barely see in this poster over here, that's me as an RA. So I served for 2 years as an RA here at UAB, working in the residence halls, having to work with people every single day, teamwork being a huge part of what I do and how I get my job done. I think that's really prepared me well for heading into PA school interviews and heading into PA school and really into the field of medicine. So ask me about that. So when I first came to UAB a little over 3 years ago now, I came in as a pre-med student. I wanted to go to medical school or my MD, practice medicine that way. I really didn't have any categories for what a PA was, didn't know who they were, what they did. It wasn't until about my spring semester of freshman year that I had an encounter with a PA, saw what they did, saw how they were able to practice medicine, saw their breadth of knowledge, and really decided that as a career, that's what I wanted to do.
Good old organic chemistry. So I think for me, coming into organic chemistry, there was a pretty decent learning curve. What helped the most for me, and I'll explain this more in just a second, is really finding a way to look at the material in a way that it makes sense. Let me explain. So at least for me, organic chemistry was really a visual science. I learned the most through being able to visualize things. So for instance, if I'm able to draw out a benzene ring and, my professor gives me a functional group that I'm supposed to put on that and, tells me I need to figure out a reaction that does that. If I can draw something down and see how electrons are moving, how functional groups are being attracted to one another, it really just becomes a game of being able to see the way that those things work. It's built on your knowledge of general chemistry and how electronegativities work, and other things. But really for me, it helps being able to visualize it. So if you can draw it out and see how those electrons are moving, how things are being shifted around and being attracted, I think that's where my biggest strides and knowledge base came from, was being able to draw it out and see it happen. Now that kind of piggybacks on just a couple of general study tips that I have. For me, the biggest thing for me in lecture is just spending time taking notes. It's easy to try to multitask and take notes and pay attention and look at the lecture slides and try to do a lot of things all at once. For me, I've found that I work the best when I can listen to the professor and take notes and then do a lot of my looking through slides and figures later. I guess there's kind of a balance in that because you want to see what the professor's talking about, but I find that taking really detailed notes in class lends to me being able to go back later and see the material that I've gone over and make more sense of it and solidify it. Now, obviously, that's just what works for me. There may be something else that works for you better, like paying attention to the professor and really grasping those fully in class, but I think that's what's been huge for me. So in addition to taking really good notes in class, especially for some of the more difficult classes I've taken, especially things that are really in-depth like immunology or pathophysiology, I find that taking my time to really dig through the textbook is useful. Now, there's some textbooks that really aren't great textbooks, so taking the time to read through them may not be the most useful, but I think for me, if there's a concept that I don't understand, I'm going to set aside time specifically for studying and specifically for reading through the textbook, right? Not just flipping through it, but I'm going to take time to sit down, block out other things, put in some headphones, put in some, white noise or something like that, and read and take active notes while I'm reading. I find that that's the way that I solidify information most readily when I'm reading, is if I'm sitting, I've dedicated time specifically to reading and taking notes, and I am taking really good notes while I read. That way you're capitalizing the most on the time that you spend in that textbook. And finally, what's been really huge for me is having a group of other classmates that are going through the same material that I can meet with and study with. Now, this is usually one of the last things I do. I want to make sure that I know the material and I've got a knowledge base to work off of and bounce ideas with other students off of, right? If I haven't done the time learning this stuff beforehand, or at least starting to learn it beforehand, then you might find it to be better to spend time studying before you go with people. But having other classmates that are going through, asking similar questions and seeing things in just a little bit different light or from a little bit of a different perspective than you can be huge in increasing your knowledge base and connecting dots and making those kind of mental connections that you need for some of this stuff in medicine. It's complicated, but making those kinds of connections and hearing the way that other people approach it can be a huge benefit. So.
For me, one of the biggest things was really just flexibility. So as a PA, I go for 4 years of undergrad, earn my bachelor's degree, 2.5 years at UAB's PA school, and then after that I'm practicing in whatever field I want, whether it be emergency medicine, pediatric medicine, some sort of subspecialty, surgical, non-surgical. And if I want to jump from one thing to the other, all I have to do is get another job. I'll spend some time training and then I'm working. Whereas as a medical doctor, I go for 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of med school, a few years of residency, and then maybe even a couple more years of fellowship. And then after more than a decade of work, I'm in one specialty, and if I want to switch, then I have to go and qualify myself for that. I think there's a ton of value in being able to switch specialties and being able to diversify myself without having to go back to school. There's a lot of value in that for me. Anyway, I think in addition to flexibility, one of the big things for me too is the work-life balance that PAs are really readily able to attain. So in my time shadowing doctors, I've found that it's usually medicine is one of the top priorities, if not the top, and then everything else in life has to file in after that. Whereas with PAs that I've shadowed, and it depends on which specialty you go into. Obviously, if you're going into a surgical subspecialty, a lot more of your time is going to be required. But as a trend, I've found that it's the case that PAs really have the greatest freedom in establishing that work-life balance for themselves. And I've found a lot of value in that, and I think that's the way that I want to go. I'm still able to provide really excellent medical care and able to do that with a full level of commitment. But I think finding that balance is really key for being a PA. On a related note as well, the fact that PA school is done in such a short amount of time, the fact that you get all that information that you need to be a successful PA condensed in just a few years as compared to the decade plus of training to be a medical doctor, I think is key for me, right? So I'm not having to wait until my mid-30s to start my career. Lord willing, I'll be able to start practicing as a PA at age 24, 25, whereas I have to postpone that in order to train to be a full-fledged medical doctor. And I think really going the route of PA and being able to jump into the medical field, provide excellent care on a shorter time frame, and have the flexibility and work-life balance that a PA has really makes it an undeniable choice for me. Man, college is really one of those awesome times where, especially once you come in for the first time as a freshman, you're able to dip your feet into really as many things as you want to. You're able to try out different study paths, take different classes for your prereqs, and see what things pique your interest. Specifically for going into medicine, I think this idea that you have to be the absolute cream of the crop to be successful is really something that is unfortunate, that's kind of spread around, especially pre-college. Especially for me, that was the case. It was the 4.0s and all the people who had 17,000 hours of volunteering and extracurriculars who are going to go and be the doctors. Really, when it comes down to it, the question is this something that you're passionate about? Could you see yourself doing this? If so, apply yourself to that study. You'll find that if it's something you love, then the studying becomes less of a hassle and more of something that's a pleasure to do. It's tough, but it's still extremely rewarding. So for the student coming in concerned about pursuing medicine and whether or not they're going to be successful, the first question I'd ask is this something that you're passionate about? If you're not sure, that's a good thing. Go and try different things, have different experiences, shadow some different practitioners, and do things in other fields to see if other fields interest you, business, those kinds of things. But for pre-med specifically, I think once you've gotten past that point, ask yourself, is this something that I enjoy? I mean, you're not going to enjoy 100% of everything that happens. There are some things that you still have to trek through regardless. But is this something that I enjoy learning more about? Is this something that I can see myself doing? My experiences in shadowing have really shown me that it's the people who love their craft and love what they do that are really the most satisfied in their careers, be it medicine or not. So I think the first question you should be asking is this something that I love? And you gain that perspective by going and having different experiences like volunteering and shadowing and being around those kinds of providers. So then the question is it doable? And the way that it was asked, is it doable as an average student? And the reason that I started out the way that I did is because regardless of what it is you decide to pursue, if it's something that you enjoy and it's something that you can genuinely see yourself being satisfied in, it's something that you are going to find a way to be successful in. If it's something that you can genuinely say, I want to see myself doing this and I want to put the time into doing this, whether it's PA, MD, nurse, respiratory therapist, occupational therapy, physical therapy, man, you name it, any kind of tech. If it's something that you've found a passion for and it's something that you really enjoy learning about and increasing your knowledge base about and practicing, that's going to be a success for you and a win for you, in my opinion. So this application cycle, I've only applied to one school. That's my home institution, UAB, and I have an interview with them in less than 2 weeks. So this also answers the reason as to why I've only applied to one school. For patient care, I actually did not have very many patient care hours. So freshman year, I worked as an intern for a local urgent care clinic. I worked in their corporate office. So it wasn't direct patient care, but it was still healthcare related experience. And then I've also worked at a summer camp with kids. I did a little bit of helping train with the first aid. So I guess you could kind of consider that healthcare related, but probably not really. And then here most recently, I've gotten most of my experience through working in a research lab in the School of Medicine here at UAB. I work in an immunology research lab, so I've logged a bunch of hours over the past 14 or 15 months with them. And I've also just recently started working in UAB's emergency room with a research team there. Well, I will have more hands-on experience with patients. So I've only applied to one school because I'm limited by patient care. So I'm going to continue to get care there. And if I don't get in now, I'll apply again next cycle. All right, so this is a really good question. How do you find practitioners to shadow, or specifically in my case, PAs to shadow? So for me, I utilized the fact that UAB has their own PA program. There's lots of alumni that have come through, and I actually went to the faculty here at our program and asked if there are any PAs available that want to shadow. I think especially once you've come through the application cycle and you've come through PA school, you realize how much time it takes and what kind of commitment it requires. So new graduates, especially here at our program, are very much so desiring to give back to those students who are going through the same things that they went to. So if you have a program at your school, definitely utilize that. That's a huge advantage. And then even beyond that, I've had friends who have had success with just cold calling and cold emailing different practitioners in their area, asking to come and shadow. For instance, I have a friend who's now in his second year of medical school who gained all of his shadowing hours by cold calling and cold emailing different practitioners and asking to come and shadow with them. So if you can find a specialty that you really enjoy and think that you'd like to shadow, then go ahead and step out and send them some sort of contact and ask if you can shadow with them. The worst they can say is no. And it certainly does speak volumes of you as a student by reaching out and taking the proactive step to ask them to come and shadow. I think lots of practitioners will will find value in that. Not everyone's going to have time, but all you have to do after that is move on to the next person and keep at it, and you'll end up getting those shadowing hours. I think one of the cool things about medicine is that it's not very strict in what kind of degree you need to earn in order to pursue medicine. I think the biggest thing that one needs to keep in mind is that you do have to have the prereqs that a particular school requires for admissions. But other than that, your undergraduate degree can really be in anything. The one specifically mentioned here is in business. I know people that are pursuing medicine with degrees in sociology or history even, or even in musical studies. When it comes down to it, the question is, do you have the classes that are required by a PA school? And then other than that, if it's something you're passionate about, then yeah, go ahead and apply. Allow that non-science undergraduate degree to set you apart. Allow it to work as a positive for you. So freshman year, I started off by joining UAB's Pre-Health Society, AED, which stands for Alpha Epsilon Delta. That's a great resource for getting plugged in and being exposed to different health programs throughout your city that are trying to recruit students to their programs, being plugged in with volunteer opportunities. Sophomore year, in addition to becoming an RA, I also started as a peer mentor in my undergraduate program. I did that just for sophomore year, had a couple of mentees that I talked to and helped acclimate to college life. And then junior and senior year, I actually helped found and was a founding member of our pre-PA society here at UAB. So I had a hand in starting that. I was one of the first members in there, and that really allowed me to form a great relationship and connection with our PA program here. So I know a couple of the faculty through that, and was able to really spearhead a lot of volunteer experience for the program through that. So got a lot of leadership experience there. And then other, small things such as, so things like Habitat for Humanity. There's a Habitat Club here at UAB, and I've gotten plugged in with them, gone for quite a few weekends doing some of their builds. I've also served with a couple of health clinics and mobile clinics in the area and beyond, as well as helping serve with my local church. So I've been on a couple of trips with them to go in our city and throughout our region here in the Southeast to go and do different volunteer engagements with them. That's actually a really good question. I think the answer that I give is probably a little bit incomplete because I haven't gotten to PA school or practiced as a PA yet. But from what I've seen through shadowing experiences and through what I've learned about the profession already, I think, number one, the program that I'm in has prepared me extremely well for PA school. Just how rigorous and how time-consuming and how demanding getting an education to become a PA is going to be. And then I think, too, of the times that I've shadowed and seen how PAs have the responsibility of taking care of some really ill patients, especially for me as someone wanting to go into pediatric oncology. That's an extremely mentally and emotionally demanding field. So I'm sure the time that I've spent taking care of kids at camp and being around them in that capacity, helping to raise my nephew, and working as an RA are really going to contribute to my emotional and, I guess, stamina. That's part of the reason why I think it's so crucial for schools to see that you've taken time to shadow and taken time to volunteer and put yourself in those situations where you are going to have a lot asked of you. You're going to see the kinds of demands that practitioners have put on them, especially in more acute subspecialties where patients are more ill, where things are more high stakes. You get a little bit of a taste of what exactly goes into caring for those patients and what kind of emotional and physical and mental demands are going to be asked of you. So really it comes down to having those experiences and having a lot of time to ask yourself the question and be honest with yourself as whether or not this is something that you want to go into. You know, that's the question that I really haven't been wanting to ask myself, but it's something that I've had to consider. Right now, the work that I'm doing in the emergency room as well as in research lab, I'd probably end up continuing to get experience there. I'm just now starting to be able to get patient experience through that work in the ER, as well as really increasing my exposure to clinical medicine through the medicine research lab. So probably continuing those, just working, getting that experience, and then I'll definitely reapply. Regardless of whether or not I get in, the goal is still PA, whether or not it's this year or 5 years down the road. So that's going to be my continual process. If I don't get in, I'm going to apply again. So the interview can kind of be a tough thing to prepare for because you're really trying to strike a balance between just letting the program get to know you and selling yourself to the program. I've had a couple conversations with people who are current students as well as people who are current practicing PAs, and I think specifically for UAB, their goal during the interview seems to be just to get to know you, right? So you've done the hard work up to this point of getting the interview invite, so now it's just a matter of them making sure you're a normal human being. So for me, it's a lot of knowing some of the general questions, like why do you want to be a PA versus MD, what is a PA, what do they do, and just getting ready to be myself, kind of like taking myself down and talking myself off the ledge, rather. So yeah, I think the big thing for me is just going to be making sure you're comfortable and not losing your mind, making sure you're kind of calm and ready to just get to know the people at the program.